Yep. So when medicine goes woke, bad things can happen, like not understanding basic biological reality. You know, the difference between, say, boys and girls. Sadly, this is actually happening. Jeff Charles is a contributor for RedState.com, Liberty Nation, and the host of A Fresh Perspective podcast. Jeff joins us now. Jeff, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on this. Whatever happened to following the data and following the science and the whole, scientific process? That seems to now all have been junked for whatever this woke political correctness make-believe stuff is. Talk to us about this. I know you've discussed this issue quite a bit, but what are you learning about the WOKERY in terms of practicing medicine now?
Yeah, what I'm learning is that the one rule that you need to follow is that woke virtue signaling trumps facts and data. So, and it's created an environment where, frankly, a lot of medical professionals and medical professors are even afraid to refer to somebody by their original sex or use the wrong terminology. So essentially the authoritarian Marxist approach is infiltrating the world of medicine, just kind of like we're seeing in the military, in the classrooms, and in other institutions. They're trying to inject this stuff everywhere that they can, and they're doing it largely under our noses.
Yeah, I was reading an article just the other day that was discussing, this was a physician at Harvard. She was a professor, and she was promoting a book where she was talking about these biological issues. And then the head of the person who is the officer of diversity and inclusion and all the other CRT language, that officer there, that person, they took issue with this professor, this Harvard professor, using the term pregnant women. And then I guess decided to try to incite a rage mob on Twitter to go after this professor. When did that phrase, pregnant women, become when did that become such a trigger, Jeffrey? This is crazy.
I want to blame it on Representative Cori Bush when she came out and talked about birthing person and birthing people. But this stuff is going on long before she said that. It's where she got it from. And this is essentially the left trying to enforce their language, their nomenclature on everybody else. It's not simply a matter where they believe that things should be said one way and then you can have that debate. No, that they want to shut down and punish anybody who doesn't acquiesce to the way they want things said. So what happened to this Harvard professor, that's happened to multiple professors that I've been reading about. It's horrible.
Yeah. This another piece that I had been looking at. Where in medical school, there are young doctors apparently taught to declare their pronouns before meeting patients, and the NIH, the CDC, and the Harvard Medical School have all made efforts to separate sex from essentially the practice of medicine, and they are really focusing on gender identity. I just think, Jeff, there was a story where a transgender man, a woman who identifies as a man, walked into a hospital. I shared this just earlier, actually just yesterday on my radio program. Went to the hospital, had some cramps. Turned out that this individual was with child, but because of the way that we are now, I guess, that medical professionals are directed to approach medicine with this emphasis on gender identity. I mean, that's not something that you can immediately ask a person. Doesn't that actually add time on to addressing serious health issues with people? I just feel like we're going to get to a point where that's actually going to impede the ability of doctors to get in and actually save lives when seconds count.
It does. It's making things a lot more complex, a lot more complicated. It's making it harder for medical professionals to navigate this whole world because they say the wrong thing, they'll get punished. And keep in mind, in this story, a baby died because of this. So this is a serious matter. I'm not saying that this would happen in every single case, but the fact remains, if you're adding on more elements that will make things more complicated, make it harder for medical professionals to heal, then it's probably not worth doing.
Man and woman, we have different medical issues. We have different medical realities. And it seems so weird to even have to walk down that road to explain that to anybody, right? I mean, people would understand that men and women are two very different beings that have very different biological needs, that have very different things that medical professionals will have to address at some point in our lives. So are we forfeiting the acknowledgement of that reality because of this? And what does that say about medicine and the practice of medicine in the future? It kind of feels like an idiocracy kind of style medicine or healthcare system.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I don't think that the average person is giving it up, but I do think that's where they want us to go. And honestly, Dana, the issue is that everybody knows that we're being gaslit. Everybody knows that the emperor has no clothes on. It is for that reason why they enforce their nomenclature so strictly. They know that they can't persuade people to think that men and women are the exact same, and that's even biological sex now is a social construct. So what they have to do is punish you for 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 saying anything different. So what they want to do, and even in that story at the school, I mean, there were students who were bullying the professors into using the correct terms. And what they want is a system where people self-censor so they don't have to actually worry about having any type of pushback.
Yeah, it's a great point. I know you've focused and have talked about authors like Abigail Schreier and people who have just simply commented on the science and the basic fact of these issues. One of the big topics that I really do worry about as it relates to this is, for instance, with these young kids that are going in and talking to, like one of the professors, and I think one of the articles that you cite here had written a paper that was discussing the issue of the number of kids who are identifying or saying that they have gender dysphoria. And this medical professional, this professor who has a background in medicine, wrote a book about it, and ended up getting, the rage mob came for her. But no one, and while they were all going after this adult medical professional who's speaking from a trained background, no one's talking about what we're doing to very young kids who have not yet gone through puberty, who are being just prescribed hormones. And I don't even think do we actually even really know what the long-term effects of hormonal usage is going to be? No one's talking about that. And that scares me. Jeff, where do you think that we're going to be with kids like 15, 20 years from now? Because we've had this explosion of gender dysphoria and all of these hormone prescriptions. What is that? Where's it going to lead us?
It depends on who wins the argument, Dana. I mean, conservatives have to get out there and repudiate this stuff. If we don't, if the left does win, then we are going to have more of this. And keep in mind that the one that you just talked about, the book, talked about how, girls were identifying more as transgender, and it seemed like it was more socially influenced. And like you said, they came down on her. They made her make a few cosmetic changes. But here's the thing. They didn't say she was wrong. So they knew that they even said what she said was factual. So they said, yeah, what you're saying is factual, but we don't want you to say it. And if you do, we're going to hurt you. We're going to hurt your career. So yeah, we have to win this argument, because if not, the consequences are not anything that we probably want to think about.